Hey everybody, we're about to start the next panel. I know everyone is having fun with coffee, but we're gonna have fun with coffee and with stories from the region. So let's all settle here within the next minute or two to start our panel and listen to amazing stories from the whole region, okay? So if you're holding a coffee right now, chug it.
People just want to have break. Well, it is our, in a way. I love Taylor Swift. Not gonna lie. I've been to her concert.
No way.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'll ask Darko what we should do.
Give people a break.
Hey everybody! After some consultation with the Zashtoner team, we have decided to start the panel right now, in line with the beautiful, beautiful tradition of this conference to always have everything delayed. So, it's our absolute honor to bring three amazing speakers from the region, Hisam, Teona, and Vladimir. Now, very, very quickly, you might be asking, what is happening right now? What are we doing? So, I will assuage your existential panic, and I'll explain. Every point conference, we've taken the time to not just do thematic sessions, we've also taken the time to feature regional stories. Those are stories of people from across Central Europe and beyond who have been doing incredible, incredible things, changing governments, fact-checking, media, every single cool thing that you could imagine, right? So every point conference, we have been giving people the chance to showcase their work, and this one is no different. The only thing that's slightly different is that those sessions were usually moderated by someone from Zashtoner, and today they are moderated by me, at least this one. But to be fair, I often hang out at the Zashtoner office and drink all the coffee, so I guess I am officially part of the organization. So, once again, if all of you are out there drinking coffee, chug it, join our panel, and in the meantime, I am going to give the floor to Teona, I believe, because your presentation comes first.
Oh, I guess. Let's check. Oh, yeah, all good. So, yeah. Hi, everyone. I am really excited to be here, even though this is my first time of being here. With the warm introduction, I feel like part of the family, so really nice to be presenting today. Yeah, so I am. And I will be talking about Forsted's way of, can we also, yeah, so the way we created a civic tech tool with the ambitious plan to create Georgia's largest public database. I will share why we decided to create this tool and what was our lessons learned. I believe we could find some of the main challenges, some of the common challenges that you probably, who have been working in Civitech, have been tackling for past several years. So before I start, I wanted to ask, have you ever requested freedom of information before? Like, raise your hand if you ever in your lifetime requested something from the governmental body ever once. I see quite a lot of hands, so that's great. I see probably lots of journalists and watchdog organizations. My next question would be, raise your hand if you requested freedom of information more than once, twice, 10 times, 20 times or more. great audience so far. And my last question would be, raise your hand if you received all the data without any challenges. Like you received it in 10 working days, or you received the data you were asking for. I see no hand whatsoever, so there were just 2 hands. 2 lucky people I'd like to talk to later on. So for most of us, the experience have not been that great. We've seen a lot of challenges, delays, etc. And then we felt kind of hopeless in a sense. You know, there are so many challenges, we are not moving forward. But in life, my approach would be to look at things in like grand scheme of things and to see the progress we went through the years. So for instance, I am from Georgia. I'm not sure I mentioned that earlier. We brainstormed in Georgia what was the main progress that we've achieved throughout, for instance, 10 years. One main one was we can now digitally request information from 2013, which means you do not have to print out the letter, you do not have to sign it, you do not have to bring it to yourself, so that is great. Another great thing is you can sign official documents digitally, and that is as valid as the original one. So that made our life much more easier. So you do not have to print out again, sign, scan it, much more easier. And lastly, each public body now has Freedom of Information Officer. So it's much easier for us to ask for any kind of information, knowing that there is a dedicated person who would respond. Again, after discussing all these potential, beneficial things, we also brainstormed what was the main challenges. In Georgia, when we are talking about the freedom of information, the main challenge is responses being late. According to law, they should give you the information as soon as possible, but no later to 10 working days. But that's never the option. Another issue we were facing is, in case they do not have the data you are asking for, they will redirect you not at once, but they will wait for 10 working days, then redirect you, and then you have to wait another 10 working days. So it's like a bit of hellish experience. And there was also an assumption that governmental bodies tend to behave slightly differently when, for instance, journalists asking for the information as opposed to, for instance, students. Like they are more mobilized when journalists or watchdog organizations are asking. And lastly, public data sets are scattered all over the place. So it is like divided into more than 300 web pages. So having that in mind, having the progress in mind and the main challenges, we thought, hey, let's create a website where you can send out the freedom of information, and also all the received data sets are public. So like data is adding up, correspondence is open, data sets are open, so it's like really easy not to waste 10 working days, but just go there and find the data set that you are looking for. That's pretty much what we did. We created a website called askgov.g. Pretty simple for a civic tech tool. It has just several options. This is how it looks, by the way, now. So the first, you can go and you can find an authority. In Georgia, we have around more than 300 authorities that are required by the law to share public information. So we have all the relevant emails, so you can just go there, find the body you're looking for, draft a letter, send out, wait for hopefully 10 working days. Another great thing is you can just browse and search requests. So because everything is open, all the letters or the data sets are open, you can just check what other people are asking. Maybe you already have the data set that you're looking for. And lastly, There's just a list of public authorities in order you to scroll down and get inspired to whom to write, etc. So this is basically 3 main features that this website has. Pretty simple, but pretty transparent. We've launched it, I would say, 5-6 months ago, and even though you cannot measure things in numbers, like you cannot measure impact in numbers, I will just share some of the numbers to make you understand where we are at this moment. So this is still like beginning stage. We have more than 300 public authorities at this moment displayed, more than 500 unique freedom of information requested. So we are adding up the database. We reached more than 300,000 people. We curated 8 data visualization stories and published them to local media. So that's what we've been up to these days. Working on this project, actually, we learned a lot throughout this process. So here are several lessons learned I'd like to share with you. And the first, and I would say the main one, is civic tech tool development is complicated. And if possible, never do it from scratch. In our case, so I went through the model we went through in our organization. So we brainstormed the challenges, we discussed what was the good sides, and then came up with the solution. So then what we did was not went to our developer and asked her to develop write the code, but we researched what was already out there. We were lucky enough, we found a great organization. If you're working in Civitech, you might know them. They are based in Great Britain, called My Society. Absolutely incredible. So they wrote a code, it's called Alaveteli, and it's totally free for you to use. So that's what we did. We just used the code and translated that into Georgian. So that would be kind of my advice, like never do it from scratch if you can just use another code. Another thing we learned is, wait for it. So this is actually like similar to the first one. So civic tech is not all about technology, it's all about people. So it's all about finding what solution you're trying to solve, rather than stressing yourself to find like the most technologically advanced solution. Like nobody cares that much about what code you write, like how complicated that is, as long as it is solving the issues that people have. This might be like common sense, right? Like this is so easy, but people in civic tech tend to forget that from time to time. So that would be also my suggestion, never to forget that. Another thing is, and this was actually new for me, to be critical friend, like an ally to the government. Like there's 2 thoughts of civic tech. Like American one, as far as I know, is being more vocal, being like angry at government. But there's also another approach, to be more friendly, like to talk with them, to make sure that you are strengthening one another. This is a bit controversial because, of course, it depends on the government and country you are in, but in general, that was my main takeaway. First, make sure you try to form relations with the government. Another thing when we are working in civic tech is done is better than perfect. So what we did was we created a basic design of the website and we just published it. We did not start the communication campaign right away. What we did was we published it. We had a group of people, like the community, shared this tool, gave them some time to test it. They gave us the feedback, then we accepted, and then went to public. So it's like always easier to share the product that is not perfect. Make sure your community tests it first, and then you make sure you follow your communication campaign along the way. And the last takeaway I had working from this project is building community around your project is as important as creating the tool. So now I would say like 70% of our work is dedicated to building the community rather than like creating a code or updating the code or etc. So what we do is each month we have competitions, hackathons, datathons. We make sure that people know what the tool is. People request the data set, but that's not it. Like they do something with it, like they create data visualization product, they start campaign. So we make sure that they have time to dig into the data. Like open data itself is not an end result, right? So it's just a tool to keep government accountable. So building community, like building passionate people around it is as much important as creating the tool itself. So that is like the last takeaway I wanted to share with you. And I think that was it, yeah. Thank you.
Perfect. Thanks so much. And I love the conclusion. Can I just get the clicker? Perfect. And I love the conclusion. The real open data are the friends we made along the way. But in this session, it's not just government we keep accountable. I'm also accountable to the clock. So, Hissam, please take over the floor. And I'm very excited to hear about your project.
So can we put the presentation up? It's probably it's here. Okay. So I'm gonna invite you to open your phones, go to redpillchallenge.com or scan this QR code before we begin talking about anything. There's gonna be a set of 9 questions. I'm gonna take you into a journey there. Try to answer them. If you don't know something, make a guess. And then we're going to talk. We'll give you 2-3 minutes to finish it. Yeah? And then we can start talking. Also, people at the coffee break can also participate in the challenge if they want. They can also scan the QR code or go to redpillchallenge.com. right? So we have like 20 more seconds and then we can start. So, back to the room and out of the matrix. I think the presentation has gone. Can we put it back? Oh, okay. So, first, before we tap into the results of the challenge, who we are. So basically, we are a group of people. It's not only me. I have people working with me, and we are interested in the interplay between technology, government, and society. We are people who founded several digital initiatives, including Morsi We also founded akhbarmeter.org, which is a fact-checking and media observatory in Egypt. We did work also with Warcoast, which is a very recent initiative to count the casualties in the war between Russia and Ukraine. We worked on the Red Pill Challenge and several more initiatives. We are very interested in the field of technology and society and government. We are living mostly in Germany, but we're not immigrants. We have color, we're people of color, we're Muslims, but we're not like that. So we also attended and participated in the Egyptian Revolution, and we learned a lesson or two about conflict and fighting for freedom and democracy. And we love POINT, and we're always inspired by it. Let's look at the challenge. So basically, I have to congratulate you because there's 50% of this room who are out of the matrix, and they are whether Trinity or few who are the oracle or the architect of the matrix. And there are people who are part of the matrix among us, 3% and 6% also in another character. But why we're doing this? Why is this game or this challenge important? We live, unfortunately, in a world where there is a lot of misconceptions, a lot of stereotypes. People live in a bubble where they see a different reality than the reality that actually exists. This picture is taken not so long ago. It's in Syria. It shows flags of US, the flags of Russia, and the flags of Syrian oppressive government. The red pill and the message we take out of there is that this happened a long time ago. We saw Russia doing this, but nobody did a thing. And now, look what is happening in the whole world when people don't really care for something like that. Sometimes people who promote human rights and democracy sometimes they take difficult turns, they become themselves oppressors, but in a different place. At the end, we look more or less the same. This is Mohammed Najim from Syria. He's a kid who decided to document the destruction and war in Syria through selfies. A lot of people might mistake him for somebody from Ukraine, but that's not the case. Destruction happened everywhere, and there could be people who look like us, but not with the same proximity. Atrocities sometimes go unheard. Such picture could look like it's from Syria, but because sometimes the media is controlled by some people, some images and facts are not very much shared. This picture is from Gaza, Palestine, and this happened many years ago, several years ago. Also, one very important message is that places that have war, or where war take place, or where people are killed and places are destructed, they're not per se like bad places. They are amazing places. These two pictures are actually from Syria. And many people would say like, oh, this is part of Europe, or this is part of a modern place, but actually this is Syria. And those pictures were taken before the war, and no place in the world deserves war. No place in the world deserves that. The red pill is very hard to swallow. There are several key messages that we can take out of this, and it's super important to share. Color, religion, and ethnicity do not determine the worth of people being killed. It's great to stand against war and killing, but we have to be consistent. We have to stand against all wars and all killings, because when we do that, we stop worse things from happening. If we had done that in the past and stood as one hand, did what we did nowadays, we wouldn't have reached this reality. So these are the main key messages that I think we should take the time to think about. Share the red pill challenge and challenge our friends and challenge the people we know, and try to get out of the matrix. That's my message. And if you would like to follow me for more projects and initiatives, please, these are my contacts. And yeah, I'm looking forward to any questions.
Oh, perfect, amazing. Thank you so much. And also thank you to everyone who has joined us from the coffee break. It's such a joy to see, like, you know, the seats in the audience filling up. You are all amazing. And for the last dose of amazingness, Vladimir, please.
Thank you. Thanks, Lukacs. So I don't have a flashy presentation because the subject is not does not give out to being shown in pictures. I'm afraid this is a subject that needs to be talked about in words, because it's, I don't know, I think things are getting complicated with the fact-checking the same way as the things are getting complicated in our world. So I'm coming from the Metamorphosis Foundation from Skopje, from North Macedonia. And we have been working on fact-checking projects for 12 years now. We started in 2011 with the Truth Meter as a public accountability and transparency website. And at the beginning, we will fact-check statements of the politicians and election promises of the political parties, checking if they are fulfilled or not. And then, as the fact-checking got more and more popular, and when the need for fact-checking grew, we were growing with it. Starting from 2013 until 2017, we worked on a big media fact-checking project. Elida spoke something about that. That was a very hard time in North Macedonia. Like, we had a very nasty authoritarian regime, and the result of all that is that the then Prime Minister is now criminal refugee under the protection of the Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban, and we are waiting for the day when the authorities will be able to bring him back so that he can serve the jail time he is convicted to serve. So then as the fact-checking grew furthermore, we continued working on adjacent areas like media literacy and strengthening and developing critical thinking. We became IFCN members, and then 2-3 years ago we became the independent third-party fact-checker for Facebook. And throughout all this time working on fact-checking, we were able to see another thing showing up through our fact checks. We've been seeing more often than not that disinformation was used to spread foreign, malign, and undemocratic influences in our country and in the region. But that was not something that was, easy to talk about or to write about like all the time. We would publish articles like that where we would follow the disinformation, where their sources, where do they come from, who is behind it. We would do regional analysis from time to time, but spreading foreign malign influences was the area where, some fact checkers were working on and some security think tanks. Well, now, these days, we live in a different world now, don't we? Especially after the COVID and, of course, after the Russian aggression against Ukraine. So now speaking about, talking about and writing about foreign malign influences is not such a big thing when people are dying every day. So we decided to work on this issue much more seriously during the next period. And we also see that now the audiences are also ready for a project like this one. Like just in March, we had a national poll in North Macedonia where we asked the citizens about their opinions regarding disinformation. And we got really interesting results, like 90% of them think that disinformations are a serious problem, and more than 80%, like 82%, think that the government should do something, and that something, among other things, is like adopting some kind of law regarding disinformation, which is, I'm sure you agree that's something that's controversial, but it seems that the citizens are fed up with disinformation. And of course, here we see disconnect between the citizens and the experts. As you can imagine, experts are not so eager for a law of this kind. But this shows us that now we are, the audiences are ready, to dig a little deeper, to go behind the disinformation, to the source of disinformation. And so, as I saw throughout our work, we would see these malign influences where disinformation was used to spread them, and we would also see that they would have a regional component, and that they were regionally tied. Like we would see disinformation here in the region jumping from one country to another country to third country, and we would see that that spread of the specific disinformation getting bigger. And we would also see very often how disinformation would come back to the origin country, but it would be even worse. It would be twisted, and it would cause a lot more damage. And you can see, here in this region of the Western Balkans, we do have a separate politics, or I don't know, maybe different problems from time to time, but the thing is that our media scenes are interconnected because the languages are close, and the cultures are close. People are used to reading certain media outlets for decades, So it is not very hard for this information to jump from country to country and to spread fast. So, so we need to fight this cross-border disinformation by creating cross-border networks. And we did create cross-border networks, you know, even before. This will not be the first time. Like we created anti-disinformation network of the Balkans, which connected different types of organizations, the fact-checkers, the media, the NGOs. This is a network where we wanted to include as many people as possible from different stakeholders so that they would be able to talk to each other. The SEE check is also worth mentioning because this network, which you know, collects Croatia, Serbia, Bosnia, Montenegro, it is very easy for them to work together because their languages are so close. And when it comes to the policy matters, there is also a policy level network initiated by the Center for European Perspective from Slovenia. So the project we will be working on in the next 3 years is titled Western Balkans Anti-Disinformation Hub, and the subtitle is exactly what I was talking about, exposing malign influences through data-driven watchdog journalism. So as with fact-checking, like we were using journalism for this specific job of fact-checking, now we'll use it once again to expose these malign influences through watchdog journalism and through data-driven journalism. So there will be a lot of products, there will be a lot of fact checks, there will be a lot of analysis. We will monitor the media so that we can really pinpoint where these malign influences come. And we will, of course, be working this on regional level, and we will be working it with our partners, with our long-term partners that we've been working on a project like this for quite some time. Zašto ne will be working with us, the International Security Action Center from Belgrade, from Serbia, the Center for Democratic Transition from Podgorica, Faktoje from Tirana, Albania, and S. Bunker from Pristina, from Kosovo. So as you can imagine, I mean, it's a regional project and networking is really important. So I'm calling upon all of you, if you want to cooperate, please do find us so that we can, you know, start doing networking here and even extend this network of partners. Thank you.
Perfect, amazing. Thank you so much, and thank you to all three panelists for the presentations once again. Now, of course, I want the discussion to be livelier than a Taylor Swift album, so questions from the audience very much welcome. Just so I can gauge, any of you have questions already from the audience? Not yet. Ah, down there. Perfect.
Okay, hi guys. My name is Maggie. I come from Tirana, Albania. Thank you for the presentations. I have one question that it's for all of them, for Teora, Haitham, and Vladimir. Personally, I do not come from a background of, you know, journalism or fact-checking processes, so I'm sorry if it sounds a little bit naive as a question, but I would really like to know the challenges of the process of fact-checking itself. So, for example, for Vladimir, he mentioned really challenging moments such as, I don't know, putting someone to jail. So, as somebody who does not come from this field, how do we know the whole process is? not challenged by any threats, or what are the main issues going on there, or if you're gathering data like Taona. We all have this former public information that is released from the government, but what about the content? When I was a student, it was really challenging to get some specific data. I mean, I'm not talking about confidential information, of course, but there is a very gray area between what is normal public information and then what is confidential, and you cannot penetrate there. And about what you said, Haitham, for the reality, when I first heard the statement, when you said there are people living in a bubble and there are people who don't know what reality really is, and actually reality nowadays has become a subject matter, so it's not the same thing to everyone. Personally, I believe that we have a problem as a species when it comes to war, because you said you live in Germany. Even though we're discussing Syria, Middle East, African countries, we all know what happened on Second World War all over Europe and what is happening once again. So how do you challenge the main stakeholders, not only the people who consume media, but UN Security Council, people who actually have a say in all of this? Thank you very much.
I would like to start. So I was trying to illustrate the state of affairs in North Macedonia during the political crisis. So the authoritarian prime minister from then, he was convicted by the courts. It had nothing to do with fact-checking. We don't put people in jail, and that's not our job, and that's not our intention. He was convicted by the courts for corruption, and just before going to the prison to serve his sentence, he escaped to Hungary. And he's still there now. I think it's been 5 years or something, under the protection of the Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban. That's all. It had nothing to do with fact-checking. Well, and now to your question. So, how are we working so fact-checking is journalism discipline, and it's nothing new. Fact-checkers exist in media for decades. I mean, there are, I know in the 90s I was asked by the National Geographic to fact-check their story on Macedonia. And they were like really strict. They wanted to know, very detailed things like how do shepherds hold their stuff, downward or sideways, stuff like that. So fact checkers existed, the only difference now with this contemporary fact-checking that we are doing now is when are we doing fact-checking. So the fact-checkers exist in two ways, like pre-publishing when the article is created and post-publishing after article is published. So this is what contemporary fact-checking organizations are doing now because of the widespread distribution of disinformation in the social media and unfortunately in traditional media. Even before we started doing fact-checking in 2011, we had like 6-month effort with local and foreign experts to create a fact-checking methodology. And a specialized fact-checking methodology for post-publication fact-checking articles. So we were working on this methodology for like 6 months, and there's nothing special there. We just wanted to have a document that we can always go back to. And you can find it on factchecking.mk. You can find our methodology, and it's specialized. It's a media fact-checking methodology, but you will you will not see anything different than what's in journalism handbooks, in universities. And just one more point, and I will be done. So when you are talking about the difficulties of fact-checking, Unfortunately, they do exist, but we are aware that we cannot fact-check everything. There are certain things that we cannot fact-check because there is no data, or because getting the data would be very expensive or impossible or not worth it, because, you know, we wouldn't be able to fact check 10 other things if we would start fact checking this one thing. We are aware of limitation of fact checking, and that is the reason why our fight against disinformation is not only fact checking. That is why we are doing a lot of different things, like media literacy, strengthening critical thinking, spreading positive narratives, and a lot of other things. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Though you didn't answer the one fundamental question that I think was on everybody's minds. How do the shepherds hold the staff? Downwards or sideways?
Depends on the climate.
Okay, depends on the climate. Perfect. Achi, any more questions from the crowd? Perfect. So I can ask what's been on my mind. What's I? Oh, sorry, please.
Thank you for your question. I would also like to add something to Vladimir. The points that he mentioned are really critical, but also because I work in Egypt, I have an initiative called Akhbar Meter, which translates to Media Meter, and we work with fact-checking in Egypt. And there, the environment and the context really matters. And the biggest challenge that we face is fear of sources to speak up about certain things and topics, because the context is full of fear that they might get, especially in certain topics. And the way we deal with it is we try as much as possible to stay away from very sensitive topics and focus more on promoting good practice among journalists, and sometimes in topics that are not super harmful or sensitive. So that's maybe one thing to add, at least for the context in Egypt. A great thing that you said is, and I agree with it completely, is the realities nowadays are very subjective. That's absolutely true. However, we have a moral compass that has been driven by shared public values that we developed across many years. We reached a certain realization of human rights. We know that killing innocents is wrong. Killing civilians, of course, innocent, the word innocent is a bit subjective, but killing civilians who are not holding weapons or guns, it's immoral. Killing kids is immoral. Displacing people, forcibly migrating people, these kind of shared values are the things that should shape our reality, and not the media and not the messages that are being pushed by big media organizations or by governments in some cases. So as for challenging authorities, there are two ways to go about this for people to get out of the bubble and to see the reality. One way is to go top down, to face and challenge authorities, and then descend, and then they would change the media and how it functions, and maybe also change their message, and maybe incorporate a different narrative, like, for example, what we heard before of public statements of the, oh, Ukrainian people are, they are like us, they are blonde, they are with blue eyes. These kind of messages coming from an official, of course, shapes a lot what the response from the public would be. But to do that and change this kind of few who control many is kind of difficult, in my opinion, because politicians and governments work on different agendas in their own interest. So my approach is to go bottom up, and to go bottom up with a way that would engage people. And that's why we started actually not with this red pill challenge, so as a tool, but we started with a website called thewarcoasts.com. If you visit that website, it states the casualties in numbers from Russia and from Ukraine in the entire war and what's happening now. With the concept behind that humans being killed, regardless of from where they are humans being killed. And these are the real costs of such war. But then, this is not engaging with people. People do not want to do that. So we thought about creating a challenge, a game that would engage people and go from and reach to people on the ground. And once people are really convinced, they can take it up to the government, and then we can see a change on the political level, on government level. But starting from top is something not me and not regular individuals would be able to reach that quickly. It's not a quick gain, but starting from bottom up nowadays in the age of social media and like very fast spreading information, this is doable, I guess.
Can I also add a couple of words?
Yeah, of course. So we've got 5 minutes left.
So the question also included what are the challenges in terms of transparency and open data. You stated that when you were looking for information, it was so hard to get. That is still the case, but one of the main challenges that we are tackling right now, I would say, is the mindset. So Georgians are more of an emotional people rather than, having this database, rather than having database thinking. So we just make decisions out of emotions rather than, looking for data and then finding the insights, etc. So what we are doing is and then I cannot stress the importance of it enough. We are building the community. So we are building the community of young journalists, campaigners, civil society activists. We're teaching them that it is their rights to get the information from the governmental bodies, but also they should have the knowledge to do something with the data. Data itself is just numbers, right? It's not a story. So it's important for us to transfer the mindset of finding stories within the numbers. That's why we are organizing a lot of hackathons, data visualization competitions, to make sure that there are young Georgians that first would want from government to share information, and second, they know and they are ready to transform those numbers into stories and make some kind of impact. So that's what we are doing to tackle those challenges.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And with 3 minutes left, any more questions from the floor? Anyone? No question from the floor. So, Teona, I just wanted to ask you one final thing, because I was intrigued when you said that the government treats FOI requests more seriously from journalists and NGOs rather than, for example, from students. And I'm curious, why is that? Is that because journalists and NGOs know how to get back at the government legally if the government refuses to get reply to them, or what?
Pretty much. Well, first thing is journalists and activists could be vocal about it. And we are living in the social media era, so one post could be a bad publicity for those kind of public bodies. So that could be one way. Another way is we do not have a regulatory body as such. So there's a law that you should share those information, but if you don't, you cannot do much about it unless you go to court. Of course, watchdog organizations are ready to, go to the court, spend 2 years, and then receive the data that they were looking for. Not students whatsoever. So it's not their priority per se, I would say. And then that's what we want is to change. And now, in our website, all the correspondence is live. Everybody can read how each public body answers to those questions. So that challenge is that's how with openness and transparency we're trying to solve that kind of challenge.
Super interesting. So essentially, fear of litigation, court action is what motivates government. Yes.
Yeah, one of the reasons, and then this is just this is what we've been seeing, and this is what we've been hearing from journalists and activists. This is not a fact for sure. This is just assumptions. But yeah, that could be.
Wow, that's super interesting. And I think with 1 minute and 40 seconds to go, it's time for us to close out this panel. Thank you so much, everybody, for your attention, for your questions. Thanks so much for just being here. And thank you so much to Zastane for organizing and bringing all of us together. And finally, of course, thank you so much, Hassan, Vladimir, Teona. Thank you so much for coming here and sharing your stories from the region with us. So amazing. Yes, the panel's over. Get some coffee quickly, and we're about to resume our next session.